We have 2 weeks during the latter half of September to traverse the international border through the Knife Lake OtterTrack corridor, which combines some of the most interesting history of the region with the starkest spectacular cliffs in the park. And then meet up with Tom, who is an expert Quetico paddler who I actually met through this channel. He'll be based on an island in the northern part of Saganagons, along with 3 other paddlers. From there, I'll turn back west and solo travel and fish through a variety of lakes before entering the Manchain and then beautiful Carp Lake. As we work our way back on another paddling adventure.
I'm Bill from Cook.
From Cook, oh, right here, Bill.
Yeah.
I'm Karen, I'm from Maryland.
Althea.
Althea. And Althea is a...
Border Collie. Did I see you once, like way up in Quetico? Because you were out there GoProing. And
Bill, so here's a good one for you. I ran into Bill on Bent Pine Lake some years ago on a solo trip, and he just remembered it, and I named the lake, and he says, yeah, that's the one. What are the chances of that, Bill?
Yeah,
Such a small world. You were with another guy on that trip.
Yeah, it was me and Jeff.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
No dog on that one because I didn't have her yet. So.
Take care, you guys. Thank you, Daryl.
Thanks, Mark.
One of my favorite features of traveling the international border is the variety of interesting folks you meet along the way before entering the interior, where solitude is the goal.
John Tilt.
Where are you from, John?
I'm from Cambridge, Wisconsin, right outside of Madison.
Give us the highlights of your trip.
Oh, just it was real short and sweet. One week from Birch Lake Portage, got towed to there to the south arm of Knife Lake. Fishing, relaxing. Lake is super clear. You can see 20 feet down. Yeah.
See any wildlife?
Oh yeah. I saw two bears on the way in.
No.
On Big Knife Portage, just right up here. That's where you're going. Nope, I had the canoe. I had the canoe up, and I'm portaging about halfway through, and I look up, and they walked onto the middle of the portage trail, one big one and one smaller one, and they looked at me, and then just went.
Whoa! You know, you're so lucky. Most people never ever see a bear.
Or they see them in their campsite.
Right. John and I had a nice conversation. As we were parting, he asked me if I read Boundary Waters' journal. I said, of course I do. In fact, I always carry the current issue with me. But this trip, I have the summer issue because I left home just before the fall one hit the mailbox. Turns out, he is one of the writers. But it gets better. As coincidence would have it, he actually has an article in that very issue. How cool is that? I headed down the trail, only to collide with another unexpected benefactor.
We've been shooting some grouse.
I saw
the
that.
camaraderie around the campfire every night. It's just a super blessing, and just being out here in nature, God's creation. There's just no doubt. His hand is everywhere. So,
Well, can I ask your name too?
Benjamin.
Benjamin. So these guys were not only fishing, but they were hunting grouse, and they ate a bunch of grouse over the campfire.
It's pretty awesome.
And on top of that, they were super nice, and they helped me carry a bunch of gear.
Your canoe's on the way too.
Oh my God, you guys are too much. You guys are so kind.
go marching in. Marching in. Now when the saints go marching in. Marching in. Yes, I want to be in that number when the saints go marching in.
Know that, Brother Holmes?
When the saints go marching in, marching in. When the saints go marching in, marching in. Yes, I want to be in that number when the saints go marching in.
Here we are. Straight ahead is Dorothys Island and the Island of Pines.
I made a video about Dorothys Island a while back where I took a deep dive into the former resort. From the early history of Dorothy's introduction to the previous owner, all the way up to her days of notoriety. I wanted to look at it from more than just a historical perspective, but also in terms of the physical features of the terrain. So I walked the island and compared the spaces as they currently exist to the images depicted in the old photos, and it was easy to imagine it back in the day. What an amazing story.
Along the Canada side of Knife, all the way up.
On these larger lakes with a long fetch, it's important to monitor the incoming waves and maintain that perfect angle of approach in order to maximize speed and safety. With the ultra-maneuverable pack canoe, it's easy to do as the bow is so responsive to the slightest paddle stroke. If one gets distracted for a few seconds, looking at the map or perhaps some interesting feature on the shoreline, that's when stuff happens. Here I am on Knife Lake in the Boundary Waters. Had to camp here because there's really no spots along the northern shore. Already packed up, just waiting for the daylight signal. And I'm gonna head north, straight up to the island where Tom and his crew are camping. Knife Lake has a rich history and a uniqueness that is extraordinary. It contains a rare and extremely useful type of rock seldom encountered in the rest of Quetico, called siltstone. This is the best material for making spear points, arrowheads, and other tools that were utilized by the Paleo-Indians. Shirley Peruniak worked as a naturalist and historian in Quetico for 16 years, and then as a volunteer for the remainder of her life. In her book, Quetico Provincial Park, An Illustrated History, she reports that a botanist discovered a 10-foot outcropping of siltstone in 1984, hidden in a stand of big cedars on the north shore of Knife. The, quote, botanist was none other than Shan Walsh, the park's official plant expert who published this book that is my go-to for information about the trees and plants of the Boundary Waters. Shan is another unspoken hero, having dedicated his life to identifying all the plant species in Quetico, the Canadian Shield. Back when I first started coming up, you could call the park headquarters almost any time and ask him questions if he was not in the field. There is a lake named for Shan in the Hunter Island region. Another great explorer and historian is John Nelson, whose book, Quetico, Near to Nature's Heart, is a beautifully illustrated encyclopedic account of the history, flora, fauna, and folklore of the park. John did the first serious research and exploration into the Knife Lake quarries. Until recently, it was believed that the only sites were on the Canada side of the lake, but due to the blowdown of 1999, which produced a series of prescribed burns, a couple of large Paleo-Indian quarry sites were revealed on the American side, far above the current shorelines. Siltstone is a silica-infused mud that hardened over millions of years into a high-quality source for Paleo-Indian stone tool making. And thousands of years after the last siltstone was harvested, researchers are letting that stone speak for the first time. And the overwhelming evidence indicates that Paleo-Indians drawn to Knife Lake were the first inhabitants of Minnesota. Ben Ambrose lived on a point directly to the south of this plaque, a 20-acre peninsula that he eventually turned into a homestead. Ben served with distinction as an infantryman in World War I, and he never talked about his overseas experiences, except to tell about an Ojibwe army buddy from Grand Portage who kindled his dreams by describing a vast and beautiful timbered wilderness filled with lakes and rivers in northeast Minnesota. After the war, Benny headed up there, and between the 1920s and 1984, he built a cabin and various outbuildings, all the while importing Midwestern dirt and manure along with clay from beaver ponds into his agricultural plot. He lived on the spot for over 50 years, guiding and trapping and prospecting, and even partially raising a couple of daughters. He was allowed to live out his life there until his early 80s. Upon his death, the land was reverted back to its original state, and at the conclusion of a solemn memorial service, Ben's ashes were deposited by his daughters in OtterTrack Lake within view of his beloved cathedral cliff. So here we are at last, standing on the shore of our destination lake. Before long, we'll have a view of Tom's Island and see if he actually made it.
I get my first view of the campsite, and there is somebody there on the island. Let's hope it's Tom and his crew. Just standing out on the shore. I think it must be Tom. How are you, sir?
I'm better than I deserve.
This is Ray. This is
Ray, I've heard all about you. I've been dying to meet you. And you are a real sport, because, you know, to come at the 11th hour like this, that takes courage, mister.
11th hour of my lifetime.
No. Tom.
I have heard. You're probably lying, but I have heard a lot about you.
Oh,
You're an amazing guy.
I'm really not. The amazing guy is up there.
Mark, how do you pronounce your last name?
Give it a try.
Fantastic.
Exactly. Nobody gets it.
So Tom, hopefully you can share some of your history with us.
All of my trips up here revolve around my father. He served in the Navy after the war, and he continued to have a love affair with the North Woods. Just last week I read one of his diaries from 1940 when he was fishing and canoeing and paddling up in the Northwoods, north of Eley and Winton and all those areas in Minnesota. In the summer of 1968, August specifically.
Wow.
Where my older brother Fred, middle brother John, my father and I went up to the Boundary Waters. Ellen had found an old trapper's cabin up. In the following year of 69, where my dad and I went up to Agnes and Louisa. I remember taking a German Shepherd up with us in 1975 and leaving her on Don's Island, and Dad, John, and I going fishing, and she howling like a wolf because she thought we were leaving her. Passing the legacy on, to me, that's the most important. My dad looking down, I think, would be quite happy that I've kept the fires burning in terms of keeping the canoe in the water, so to speak. This is what I learned a lot from Stu in his magazine. Put this in the stern of your canoe right behind, and because this is waterproof and it won't get wet. And then I keep my rain jacket in here. And I keep the fishing license and permits in here. Outdoor card.
Yep.
In here. Water bottles in here generally. I use the Hydro Flask water bottles because they keep the water cool.
Ditch kit.
I normally don't take a chair, but because we were base camping,
Look at that.
You know, we're not doing a lot of portaging. I've got these GCI.
I might have trouble staying awake in that. It looks so comfy.
It's Ugo. Now, they make various sizes. I think this is the smallest size they make.
What's the name of that
this
again?
Is Gaia, G-A-I-A app.
And how do you, it's an app that you load on your phone.
Yes.
And it becomes a GPS.
Exactly. So here we are right now as we're talking. There's our campsite. And then in addition to this one, I've got the Garmin Explorer. So
Talk about redundancy.
Redundancy, exactly. So there's where we're at.
So this is Tom's son, Joe, has been the provider of firewood, fish, filleting services, taking care of gear, basically the caregiver for the group. What a guy. Joe, we were hoping you might share a couple of stories from your past trips in the Quetico.
Yeah, sure. I'd say a couple of the fondest memories I have would be the first trip that we took with my dad and brothers. We came up Agnes and we stayed on what we call Don's Island, long little peninsula, kind of rock peninsula that jutted out on the south end of it. There's a lot of fond memories from my dad there with his father and my grandfather's best friend Don. That's hence Don's Island. So I remember we set up camp real quick and I immediately grabbed a fishing pole. It was May 13th. And I think within about an hour and a half, I caught the whole Grand Slam.
Oh!
Bass, walleye, and big pike. I don't know if the pike counts because it did break the line, but it was huge. We got it right to the shore. I think it's big.
Wow.
Oliphant one day. We went to Oliphant because that's where my grandpa caught the biggest pike that he'd ever caught in his life. And we went fishing on Oliphant. I remember I was in the bow, my dad was in the stern, and we were throwing these poppers right at the shore and just murdering. Epic day of fishing.
Wow.
So that was a good fond memory. Another one that was good and bad, I don't know. We had this grumman, and it wasn't the lightweight grumman, it was the full-size grumman for the record. And of course, Dad had bought this real fancy Source River, badass top-of-the-line canoe, Kevlar. You know, that thing was a joy to carry. Grumman was hell. Sliding down my ass the whole way.
Oh, man.
Basically just a cliff, wet. We got to the bottom of it, and I was ready to leave that damn canoe in the bottom of the lake. We came back through Quetico, and everybody was pissing and moaning so much about that grumman. Sure, I think they had it on display outside. Green, 17-footer used on sale, and the grumman did not leave Canada. I've since used that canoe to take my son up into Bighorns, and we'll portage into these little lakes, and nobody ever sees canoes in there, and they're so appalled that you could carry a canoe down this trail. So yeah, those are some of the fond memories. Lots of good times with my dad in particular. He's very important for him, and it's extremely difficult for me to come here and now in particular, but it's important to do. So I'm glad we could do it, and glad to be here.
We have with us here the equipment guru of Quetico, Tom. And here is his sleeping configuration. What's the name?
One that Stu really likes a lot.
He
takes on all of his Stu Ostoff. He really likes them a lot.
And Stu's the ultimate field tester. I had never heard of this tent brand before. And when I felt the durable, high-quality material and saw the craftsmanship, even tested the fasteners, I was flabbergasted when I saw the price point.
This is that Big Agnes. This is that lost dog.
Okay.
And it's got this system here. You've got too.
I've got the Zen Bivy. Incorporates into the air mattress so that you don't slide off.
Exactly.
Look at that.
Yeah. So you put a little pillow in there. And you're good to rock and roll. I've gone up here with anglers before, my father included, and I considered him to be a pretty good angler, but Joe brings it to another level. Truly dedicated. He'll go out there. If he had his way, he'd probably want to go say, let's go out fishing right now.
Yeah.
So, and that's wonderful. He's that way, at home fishing in the Bighorn Mountains, and he's that way here, and it's fun to see that.
Go get them, guys. Tom and Joe have gone fishing, so now I get a chance to visit with the guys and satisfy a curiosity of mine. That being, since they are both first-time Quetico travelers, what are their background experiences that led them to jump both feet into a full wilderness experience like this, especially at our age? As I began to investigate, I quickly learned that my instincts were correct. Not only do they have great stories, each of their sagas entails adventures that are on my yet-to-be-accomplished bucket list. I developed both of these travel desires through books that I've read over the years. The first one is a writer my wife introduced me to, Edward Abbey. He was a forest ranger in his younger years and wrote about his days in the fire towers, overlooking large tracts of wilderness all day. It became a dream of mine, and one that I think I can still achieve thanks to Airbnb. But Ray actually did it.
In 1969, I went to work for the Forest Service in the Bob Marshall Wilderness area, the Rocky Mountain front out of Augusta, Montana Ranger Station. A lookout cabin, which was just right on the rock. On the summit of this mountain, there was no tower. It was not necessary. I could see about 270 degrees and as much as 40 miles in one direction. I was up there for a total of 6 weeks. After I'd been there for 3 weeks, my food was getting pretty low, so I radioed in and they said, okay, just walk down to the base of the mountain. It's not a terrible hike, and then you'll have to wait there for the mule packer, and he'll come with a pack of food for you. So I started down the mountain like they told me to, down the trail. Halfway down the mountain, there was a big meadow and elk springs with trails radiating out from it in all directions where the game had been using this area, and I got confused. Ended up going the rest of the way down the mountain the wrong way through a terrible blowdown area. When I got there, the packer was there. He was a surly old guy, had absolutely no sympathy for anybody or anything at any time. And he says, where the hell have you been? Takes the pack of food and hurls it to the ground and gallops off. Being for 3 weeks, I was looking forward to a little chat.
Oh my gosh. And a drink of water maybe?
Yeah, that's the other thing. I didn't take water with me. So finally, when I was about 400 yards, I'm estimating, from the cabin, I could see it up on the peak of the mountain. I was so exhausted that I fell down to my knees and I crawled 400 yards. It probably took me an hour and a half to get to the cabin. I crawled up the wooden steps, made a gallon of red Kool-Aid, drank the entire gallon, laid down in my bunk, and I woke up the next day in the late afternoon.
Oh my gosh!
They deactivated that lookout cabin quite a few years ago, but a lot of people go up there. If you get on Google or similar, just Google Prairie Reef Lookout, and you're bound to come up with something, including some stunning photographs and descriptions and reviews and whatnot of people who hike up there. It's absolutely stunning to get up there. In the center of one of those cabins or towers is what they call an Adelaide. It's a big navigation device that you can point when you see a plume of smoke and get a degrees readout that you can radio into base and tell them where the fire is and an estimate of how far away it is. But some hideous storms came through, and I had a wooden captain's chair with glass insulators on the legs, and when one of those storms had come through, you have to climb up on your chair and get your feet off the ground, and the lightning would be hitting the tower or the cabin on the lightning rods multiple times during a storm. So there was these St. Elmo's fire balls of fire going around inside of your cabin. Your hair would stick out straight from your head like a porcupine. It was kind of thrilling, actually.
We're doing fine here. How's the fishing?
We got a couple of pikes, one small bass.
Well, good luck. Over and out.
The second bucket list item came from a book I've read many times, usually on canoe trips, and it's about a couple high school kids who spent an entire summer traveling 2,250 miles from Minneapolis to Hudson Bay. I later read books by authors who retraced that route. Although the distance was out of my reach, I did later learn about a canoe route from Ontario to Hudson Bay via the Missinaba River system that could be tackled in about 3 weeks. We have here on Tom's Island, in person, an individual who actually completed that trip.
We started here at Dog Lake. We came through on about a 400-yard portage to Missinaba Lake. Down Missinaba Lake, into the Missinaba River, all the way up till it joins with the Mattagami, the Moose River, and the Abitibi, and then all the way to Moose Factory. One of the highlights of the trip was a place called Thunderhouse Falls, which is not canoeable, but it was a long portage that we camped halfway through the portage, and we got a great view of the falls.
The Missinaba River trip was part of Dr. Jim's PhD dissertation work, where he retraced the steps of the explorers and voyagers. What makes the accomplishment even more remarkable is that he also led a group of youths while doing so. When it came time to go fishing, Tom set me up with a primo rig. Compared to my pack canoe, it felt like a bass boat, complete with all the great gizmos: depth finder, comfy seat, rod holders, clips and cup holders everywhere. So once we got out fishing, for the most part, I was busy landing and releasing fish for the bow paddler, and every time I glanced over at Tom's boat, it looked like he was having much the same experience.
And then we've got the honey stinger waffles, the starkest tuna, variety of flavors. This is the deli style and the urban garlic, the ranch over there. We got gorp, cherry pistachio granola bites, and to keep you hydrated, Propel. They're both real good for hydration.
As a capstone to the outing, Dr. Jim caught a nice northern that I opted not to net for the sake of the fish, that I would estimate at just about 10 pounds.
This is dinner for tonight, gentlemen.
Okay.
We're having chicken stew with noodles, teriyaki chicken and rice.
You bet,
and chicken.
I love that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Barrels are really handy because they keep the critters out in the bad weather.
Mm-hmm.
So they're very handy.
Talk about waterproof, right?
Yeah, and these bags here are great because you can individualize your food. The day's breakfast and dinner goes in a bag like this. Flat, the wraps, the wholesome wheat. These are the last things that we buy You can put peanut butter on these, fish, tuna, and just roll them up and eat them.
And then we got oatmeal, all our instant oatmeals in here.
Fruit. One thing that I found interesting is these Spam single light products that you can open them up and you can just slide them up with your thumbs and eat them without a fork.
Got traditional spices,
right.
Peanut butter.
Right. I found out that these crispy fried onions, French's, they're very, very popular. I should have bought a size twice this big.
Really?
You can put these on your potatoes or supplement them in any of your Trailtopia products that you have, or any of your
this one either, Tom.
Yeah, this is a Cook in the Bag brand. It's called O'Meals.
And
they're actually quite good. Real big. They don't need refrigeration once you open them.
Really? Oh yeah.
And this one is the malt vinegar, and a lot of people love this to put on their fish.
Oh really?
And then another thing that a lot of the guys like is the lemon juice.
And then tell us about that.
And, they change color, and they're really kind of fun to have in the camp. And these guys are real troopers on the portages, man.
Oh yeah.
On this trip, for example, Mark, between Jim and Ray and Joe, we couldn't have done what we've done so far.
It's
These
amazing.
guys are troopers.
It's amazing. And that Silver Falls portage is
Yes.
brutal.
Yeah. Those are our options, gentlemen. This island 3-star for these 2 points. This point has 2 4-star. We shouldn't have any problem on Monday morning making the 11 o'clock pickup at Hook Island. And the wind should be at our back.
To the CO, Tom, thanks for bringing us on this trip.
You're more than welcome.
Salud.
My pleasure.
Salud.
To everyone we care about, plus our dogs.
The Voyagers past and present.
My dad and grandpa.
Yeah.
And new friends. Jim, yeah, that green thing.
Yep.
It's got my, I want to put that here.
Okay.
That's a go bag.
No.
Sir? Colonel? You know, as much as I love soloing, I'm gonna really miss those guys. Now that the gang is gone, it's time to look at the map and determine the next move. Given that I didn't know these guys from Adam, other than Tom, I never made any plans beyond one night on the island. I left my options wide open. Here we are, 4 days later, and my desire now is to find some small water that would have a more intimate feel. In the fall, when the bugs aren't an issue, I look for these protected, more enveloping locations. We have arrived. As a soloist, I love these, quote, crummy campsites because I barely inhabit them anyway. I just need a tiny tent pad and a flat spot to set up my observational perching station right on the edge of the water, preferably. If there's not a rain issue, I don't set up a tarp. Every campsite is a great one when you're alone. For food storage, I like to get away from the water's edge or any steep rocky areas in case a bear starts kicking around the food canister. They'll never bite or claw their way into it, but it would float away if knocked into the water and would break if dropped from the right height. So here we are, placing it in what feels like a safer spot. "7 o'clock on Bell Lake. So today we're going to lay over and fish. Let's see if we can come up with a big northern." Here it is in the morning. I love small water. So today we're going to go crack that area over there. Right in the mouth. I fished the shoreline of the back bay with little result, so eventually fished the deepest portion of the lake, which just happened to be adjacent to the campsite. We just caught another one in the same pool. Oh, there's one fish following another. That's what's going on. Something tells me this is a good one. Gonna land a big one. You gotta get to shore. Oh, wow. I think it's a whitefish.
Never caught one of those, have I? Look at that. How pretty. That's not a good grip right there. What the heck is that? What is it? Ah!
Lake whitefish were an important food source for Native Americans around the Great Lakes well before the arrival of European settlers. It's the most economically valuable freshwater species of the Great Lakes. Its exceptionally fine flavor has been extolled since the days of the early explorers. Average size whitefish in the commercial catch measure 17 to 22 inches in length and weigh about 2 to 4 pounds. The largest individual on record was a 41-pound heavyweight taken from Lake Superior in 1918. Today, the Great Lakes commercial fishery for lake whitefish is managed for sustainability. Around 15 million pounds of whitefish are harvested from the Great Lakes annually. The lake whitefish is sometimes referred to as a humpback fish due to the small size of its head in relation to the length of the body. "6:30 in the morning, another beautiful, calm, warm night. So today we're going to get up and get into the Manchain. And here's how we go butt first. I know these look like clown shoes, but they're a barefoot version of water and trail running footwear. Super durable, slip resistant, lightweight, and comfortable. Since it's so warm, I just roll up my pants and wear the extended neoprene booties. But if the weather turns, I do have a semi-dry suit on board. Here we go. Just finished reading John's article titled "Some Peace and Quiet." It was great. His beautifully written story combines elements of solo tripping, geology, wildlife, as well as valuable fishing intel to include fly fishing. And if you're a dog lover like me, you'll really appreciate John's heartwarming approach to his champion hunting dog companion. This is all wrapped up into a compelling canoe country storyline with exciting twists and turns. It's a real page turner. Although I always enjoy reviewing my reading material while in the park, this time it's particularly exciting
because I actually met the author on the trail. What a thrill and honor. And of course, we have to acknowledge the person who provided this platform in the first place, along with all the other benefits he delivers. Nobody does more for the canoe country paddler than Stu. Nice tent pad. Check it out. So the featured book for this trip is Elely Echoes by Bob Carey. I actually ran into Bob Carey in a coffee shop in downtown Eley and had about an hour conversation with him. He was in well into his 80s then, and I was amazed at what great physical condition he was in. He was still ski racing at that point. And here's the introduction, the foreword to his book. It's beautiful. My wife, Edie, and I live in the forest adjacent to Moose Lake, 22 miles east of Eley, where we enjoy the bounty of woods and water, savoring deer and grouse, walleye, bass, trout, and panfish. This bounty we share with our neighbors, including timber wolves, bears, otters, hawks, eagles, and osprey. Spring, summer, and fall, we paddle the canoe trails and walk the portages. In winter, we travel much of the same area, but on skis or snowshoes. In all of this, we have developed a profound appreciation for this wild country and for its former tenants, the Ojibwe people. Indeed, it is their lakes, their portages, and even canoes and snowshoes of their design we use to get around. And it is their philosophy we live by, of having a reverence for the handiwork of the Great Spirit and of meeting life's challenges with a smile. Along the world's byways, over the last 75 years, this writer has had the good fortune to meet hundreds of wonderful people, all of whom had a story, all of whom had something to teach. Well, here we are, 7 o'clock. Got a short paddle to the portage along the international border. And then we'll be back in Birch Lake. Choose a nice campsite somewhere near there and base camp for a couple days and really concentrate on the fishing. First light on Carp Lake. Absolutely gorgeous day. And there go 1, 2, 3 canoes. First 3 of the morning. There's campers right there. They've been really good, quiet. It's a great campsite. So here we are at our final campsite on Birch Lake, a few days before pickup. Even though I could have loitered around, fishing in almost complete solitude on the Manchain or Carp Lake, I opted instead to travel to the end of the line, Birch Lake, while I was able, because I've been hobbled with some hip issues that were getting progressively worse with each carry. It wasn't a problem while doing the work, but only afterwards while resting and sleeping. I could sense a gradual worsening, and I didn't want to risk some sort of event while deep in the woods on a portage trail where the emergency satellite beacon would be ineffective. The good news is that it's an easy surgical revision to occur this winter, so my next trip will be unencumbered. The bad news is that it caused me to rush to the finish line, which is a very crowded place. Hopefully, my text message to Donna went through and she's arranging for my pickup a few days early. While I would love to hunker down and thoroughly probe this lake for walleye and bass, the crowded nature of this area, combined with my declining ability to maneuver, motivates me to get out safely while I'm able. Plus, this nice big campsite could be utilized by a large group,
And I feel guilty taking up all this prime space just for one person. This trip has been a real bust, fishing-wise. Having said that, I'm grateful to be here at all, fishing or not. So I ran into these nice folks on the last portage here, a brother and sister team.
But to lay in a hammock and to be able to hear a leaf fall and hit the branches, and just the sense of your acute awareness and just the solitude, and yet, you know, and I think some of the neatest, and I would say I'm mostly aware of is the animals that we hear about.
Sense of like the universe when you look up at the stars and you see more stars
or that
than
the
you've
sense
ever
right
seen, and
yeah.
it's awe-inspiring just looking at the sky,
or just sensing the time by where the sun is. We're
it's a religious experience. It's a relaxing experience where if you're having a bad week at work, you come up here for 3 days, you'll forget what you were mad about.
Where are you guys from?
I'm Grays Lake, Illinois.
Oh, great. And you guys are you guys all childhood buddies? You known each other your whole lives?
4 of us are brothers.
Oh, get out! 4? Which 4?
Me,
1.
Bob, Mike, and the one sitting back there.
Get out!
Brother, no good-in-law, and friend.
You know, anybody want to mention anything extraordinary from the trip? First trip? Oh! No, you saw Bob. Oh!
He was right on the trail though, and he wasn't in a hurry to leave.
You got so lucky. Oh man!
Couple martins were chasing a rabbit, and it jumped off our point and swam all the way across the lake.
Who caught the biggest fish?
Ooh, we had a lot of really nice big walleyes.
Did you really? Yeah.
21s, 20s, they're big.
On leeches?
Yes.
How deep would you say you were getting them?
24 feet.
24 right there, huh? Boy, these guys know what they're doing.
One night, 4 fat.
It's funny when I see my canoe in comparison to any other, it looks like a little toy. So, you thought Tom and his crew would just sail off into the sunset without providing additional excitement. Think again. As their motorboat transport was speeding down Sag towards Grand Marais, the guys noticed something unusual looking in the water and asked their boat operator to go check it out. Turns out, it was a couple of teenage girls who had rented a canoe for the day and went out too far and capsized. They were wearing only shorts and flip-flop sandals with no rescue signaling equipment or survival provisions. Given that it was around noon on a fall day, those girls didn't have much time to spare. Had Tom and his crew not noticed them, I think it would have been a much different outcome.